Hi, everyone. What you're about to hear in the next hour and a half is a truncated, slightly edited version of an almost 2 hour live LinkedIn session I did with my friend Chris Do. Chris Do, who has a YouTube channel called The Future, altogether, skip the E at the end. Go check him out on YouTube. And Chris is a graphic designer, is a creative professional, dominantly a right brain professional who has focused the last couple of years on helping other creatives think about these left brain type of things, such as accounting, business, profitability, negotiation. For the most part, he's trying to help folks that are scared of these topics approach them in a different way so they feel more secure about at least the business part, the financial part of their business. Now, Chris Do has been a mentor of mine. I've been learning from him for years, and I'm super excited about this because I actually got Chris Do to come down to Miami to my conference at the end of October called Creative Business Models for Accountants. And he's perfect because I think that Chris and I are going to be helping the world bridge the gap between the creative professionals and the not so creative professionals like accountants and sort of left brain type of professions. So this conversation is about how each of us have a vision to how we can bridge those gaps. Chris himself has a special program called Brand Lab, where he helps other professionals that are mostly sort of left brain professionals think about creative stuff. And I also have my conference in Miami where I'm trying to help other accountants also think of more abstract and creative thoughts so they can succeed in different ways and really stand out amongst the competition. Anyway, I think you're going to find this conversation interesting. Enjoy.
All right, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to our conversation here on LinkedIn Audio Live. Today's topic is around Brand Lab, helping left brainers think right. Before I get into today's topic and set up the conversation, I first just want to introduce myself in case you don't know who I am. And then Hector's going to do the same. My name is Chris Do. I'm a loud introvert, recovering graphic designer, and I'm a serial entrepreneur. I have this really big mission to teach 1 billion people how to make a living doing what they love. And I think a lot of the topic today is going to center around this because there's some questions. I want to encourage all my future pro fam, if you have your badge on especially, please raise your hand if you want to join this discussion. I'm happy to have you up here. I plan to do a lot of the talking, some storytelling, some roadmap, laying things out and giving you all some value. But hopefully we're all going to get aligned on what the heck this is, and answer all of your questions, and also to give you some practical advice on what you can do if you want to set up something very similar. And without further ado, Hector, please introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Hector Garcia. I'm a CPA, and I love helping small business owners and other accountants use the best possible technology to be as efficient as possible when doing the accounting work so they can be as effective as possible when creating value for their customers.
Wonderful. Thanks, Hector. The conversation really started because Hector was checking out our Brand Lab sales page and he said, hey, helping left brainers think right. That's pretty cool. How'd you come up with that? What's this all about? And there's something very interesting about who Hector and I are and how we overlap. He's a CPA, but I think he's actually a frustrated creative trapped in a CPA's body. And he might say to me, Chris, you're a super analytical person trapped in a creative body. So I just want to start there. There's a genuine interest about where this line comes from, what it means. And before I can tell you that, I need to just take you back in time, do a little storytelling here, okay? My former business coach, who since passed away, his name is Keir McLaren. And he'd been working with me for a number of years. Now, Keir is a business consultant, business coach. And what he does is he works with people within the creative industry from lots of different industries, some in the music production, event space, main title design, broadcast design, but all in the creative space, quote unquote. And he said something to me one day, which some of you might find to be offensive, but I thought it was like, oh, that's kind of really interesting. Keir said, Chris, I know people who know how to run a business better than you, and they're doing really well. And I know people who are much more creative than you, and they're amazing. They're creative geniuses, but I know no one who seems to be able to straddle these two worlds between the business entrepreneurial side and the creative side as well as you. It's kind of like this hybrid. And to steal a line from a Wesley Snipes movie, I'm a daywalker. I have all the strengths of the vampire, none of their weaknesses. And I love that expression. And to understand it, to put it in context a little bit, within my own family history. If you understand who my parents are, you'll understand a lot about who I am. My father is a super logical, very stoic person. He's an engineer by trade, and he doesn't get involved in a lot of the emotional stuff. So most of the creative things I do, the way I dress, the way I look, everything I do, from design to motion design to education, he does not understand at all. He can understand success, but he doesn't understand what I do. And then you take it on the other side, which is my mom and her whole family. They're almost all the same. They're super creative people. They're poetic. They're poets. They're artists. They're singers, songwriters. They're inventors. They're creative misfits. And my mom's a painter. She had to get a quote unquote real job working at IBM, but she's a super creative person. She paints with oils and does chalk and pastels and pencil graphite drawings. And I think in a different life, in a different world, my mom would have been a successful artist, but she came to this country as a refugee, as I did. And so those opportunities, those ideas weren't really available to her. And if you look at my brothers, because I'm the middle child of 3 children, my older brother, Arthur, he's a super logical, almost cold person. If you think I'm cold, if you think I'm the robot, and my wife will attest to this, she's like, yo, your brother, he is so cold, so logical. And he's a software engineer. He works in Silicon Valley. And that's my older brother. And my younger brother, Mike, he's like super carefree. He didn't go to college. He bounces from city to city, does whatever he wants. He works in the visual effects industry. So you can see here, I'm the middle child. So I think I'm the blend between these two people, the artist and the business person, the logic and the creative, the convergent and the divergent, the analytical and the emotional. And I straddle these two worlds, I think, in ways that are beneficial to both communities. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. But I think Hector's equally interesting. He's the only CPA I know who has a YouTube channel. And he's creating content. He's constantly sending me stuff about creative stuff that I haven't even seen yet. So Hector, tell us a little about who you are and your kind of like your makeup in terms of your mindset and whether you lean creative or analytical.
Sure. So from my upbringing, I'm going to make my story a little bit shorter. From my upbringing, my entire family is, for the most part, sort of the left brain, the analytical, intellectual type. Not many creatives in my side of the family. However, if between my mom and my dad, my mom definitely is the creative one, and my dad is sort of the left brain and analytical one. Ever since I was young, I wanted to be in some sort of design profession. I think when I was in high school, I wanted to be an architect, and I took architecture classes in high school, and I was fascinated by it. Later on, in my early career, even though I was sort of tied to computers and networks and just the web in general, I started dabbling in web design and graphic design, and I actually took a Photoshop class from lynda.com back in the day when they came in CDs, where you sort of trained yourself on how to use Photoshop. And I've always been very, very interested on the creative world. For one reason or another, my life took me all the way to the world of finance and money, and I became an accountant. And I'm in love with my profession. I'm in love with my colleagues. I'm in love with what we do for small businesses. I love the fact that we help people speak the language of business, and when they understand accounting and they understand the core of finance and profits and understand how numbers work in their business, that they can secure their livelihood so they can focus 100% in being creative or being value creationists, people that are focused on creating value into the world with their businesses, with their entrepreneurship. So I love the fact that I'm able to wield that side of me through my skills of as being an accountant. However, I started a YouTube channel because I started doing some videos explaining to people what I did, mostly as an effort to sort of market my expertise. And my YouTube channel took off. I mean, from the context of accounting, my YouTube channel is really big because there isn't that many accounting YouTubers as you mentioned. Maybe there's a couple of CPAs that have YouTube channels. I'm not the only one. There's a couple because most accountants are just too busy, too heads down. They're focused on the number crunching and pumping out tax returns, and they really don't give tons of time and space to think and be creative and experiment. And me, from an earlier time in my career, I've been doing this for 10 years already. I gave myself, for whatever reason, I allowed myself to do that, and I think it has opened up my point of view in terms of the true value of the sort of right brain creative process that we need as left brain professionals, as analytical sort of non-creative professionals. And when I started following you, Chris, and I started looking at you as somebody that doesn't look like me, and I don't mean from a physical standpoint. I'm saying you're not the button-down accountant colleague I'm used to working with, but that you're speaking my language. You're speaking value pricing, and you're speaking negotiating your value, and you're speaking profitability. And I'm like, wow, this is really interesting. This person is essentially crossing that bridge, and I'm also inspired by that, because I want to also cross the other bridge, because I feel that the true flowering of both our worlds, of all the professionals, whether you're creative professional or knowledge professional, comes in this cross, and in this mix, in this embracing of the beauty of art while appreciating the beauty of balanced numbers. I think these two things, there's space for these two things to live together, and I believe that you can be my partner, or as many other creatives, to talk about this and let the world know that, hey, we are not different, or we just think immediately tend to think one way, but we have this other piece of our brain just waiting for us to unlock and truly allow us to do things that we didn't even imagine possible.
All right. Thanks for the truncated version of their story there, Hector. Okay. So I want to address the elephant in the room real quick. I know that there's some people pushing back real hard, like this whole left brain, right brain is a fabricated thing. There's really only just one brain. I'm not here to argue with you. I just think in terms of popular culture, in terms of how we talk about left brain is typically associated with logical, rational, analytical, convergent thinking. And if you're unfamiliar with that kind of word, convergent, it means that they believe that there's one right answer, that there's one right and true path. Whereas the right brain is associated with creativity, divergent thinking, which is there are many solutions to a problem, many different paths to solving something. And that's typically how it's talked about. And so I just want to say that for context, okay? I'm not here telling you I'm a biologist or a psychotherapist. I'm not. I'm just talking about how it's talked about in popular culture. Now, there's a couple of things I want to just start off with saying. This is a Blair Enns quote. He says, all strategy is autobiographical. It means whatever advice I'm going to give you is things have worked for me. And they may not work for you, and that's okay, right? We need to understand that. And so I'm not going to tell you something I diametrically don't believe in or have not tried. I'm just going to tell you things that has worked for me. So, and I assume Hector and everyone else in this room, you're going to say things that have worked for you. So it's autobiographical. And my early success came from my embracing of the entrepreneurial side. It's like my lack of fear about talking about money. For whatever reason, I don't have the same taboo about talking about money. I'm not afraid to talk about it. And this is the bane of most creative people. I believe that a lot of creative people, and this is just my own observations here, anecdotally speaking, is that creative people enjoy what they do. It's kind of like I get to play a game, or I get to do a sport that I love, and it comes so naturally to me that I feel guilty to charge money for this. That to receive money makes the process of what I do feel a little tainted, a little dirty. And I think that's the reason why a lot of creative people have problems talking about money. They don't have a healthy money mindset. Moreover, I think creative people, generally speaking, of course there are exceptions to this rule, are people pleasers. I am one myself. I'm a recovering people pleaser. A middle child, and you know the middle child syndrome is we want to make sure we fit into the world by helping other people and being useful to folks, right? And so if you're got these couple things working against you, you don't have a healthy money mindset, you're a people pleaser, and what you do, what your gift is, feels so natural to you that you feel guilty for charging for it. That's a triple threat right there. And so we derive a lot of meaning and value from what other people think of us, the value of our work, if it's good or not, what they want to pay us. And so it becomes a very awkward thing. Now, why I mentioned Blair Enns and this idea that all strategy is autobiographical is when I first got out of school, I didn't have the same fear or phobia of money. It was a game for me, and it's always been a game. Money is an abstract concept. It's a fabricated thing if you think about it. And so when people would ask me what my rate was, originally I charged hourly, so I would just say, it's $30 an hour and see what they would say. And if I didn't get a lot of pushback, I was like, I think that's low. Now I'm going to do all this work with all the vigor and enthusiasm that I have. But the next time somebody asked me, I'm just going to change it. I just kept changing it. And I knew at some point I would hit a ceiling in which people would bristle and say, that is too much money, Chris. But it took a long time to get there. And every time I would get close to that edge, all I had to do was upskill. I would just level up. I would learn more things. I would push into a space where there's less competition and where there's a lot of demand and little supply. I would just do that. So the first couple of years in my business, I was able to reap the rewards of being early in on a new industry, motion design, and being able to charge a certain amount of money that allowed me or afforded me the ability to hire other people right away. So here I am just a few years out of school, fully embracing the entrepreneurial side. And this is going to lead me to this line from Todd McFarlane. He's in an interview. I forget what series this is, but Todd McFarlane is arguably the world's most successful artist. He's the creator of Spawn. He's known for drawing Spider-Man in just the crazy kind of contortionist way with super high detail, okay? Somebody asked Todd McFarlane, I think it was for a Complex magazine interview, and they asked him, why are you so successful? He says, because I'm bilingual. I speak the language of creativity and I speak the language of business. I know that when I walk into a room speaking to business people, talking about art and design and creativity is not really going to move the agenda forward for me. I need to understand what they cared about, and they care about the bottom line. So he was able to move between these two worlds as a very sophisticated artist, entrepreneur, and become very, very successful. Okay, so this is the thing that I've been templating my business model around. Teaching creative people entrepreneurial skills. Teaching them all the stuff that people like Hector know everything about and feel super comfortable around. So not necessarily focusing on teaching you more creative skills, because the presumption is there are other people more qualified to teach that than me, but teaching you the things that few creative people know how to talk about or have been able to do to teach you all the left brain stuff, pricing, negotiations, objection handling, all those kind of left brain stuff, like the business stuff, delegation, project management, things that we don't love to do, but need to do if we want to be successful. Okay, so I'm going to pause it right there. Hector, you feel free to jump in on this.
Oh, I just wanted to add some sort of additional take on the definition of left brain and right brain from my perspective. You started with the relationship with money, right? Where the right brain leaning people, the creative people, tend not to have a healthy relationship with money, or talking about money, or talking about negotiation, valuing themselves, etc., etc. The other two areas that I think, and this is common also amongst the left brainers, accountants, and my colleagues alike, we have we need to work with our relationship with work. Okay, so what I feel is most of the time are the left brain leaning people or the left brain professions. When we work in a finite project. Okay, so when we do accounting, we're done when the last transaction of 1231 for the ending year is done. We're done when we reconcile. We're finished, right? So the left brain work, or the left brain thinkers, usually are mostly comfortable when they're working on a project that sort of has an end. Okay, because that's where they draw their satisfaction. They draw their satisfaction from completing it. Where I feel that the right brain folks, especially when it comes to this concept of working on art, because anything that's creative is sort of art, you can create something, but it might not be finished. And it could always be a work in progress, and it could always change and evolve, whether it's with times or with the artist's thinking or with the client requirements. Okay, so this is more of a living, breathing thing, versus in accounting, you're supposed to complete the year and you're not supposed to restate financial statements. History is supposed to be history. So our relationship with work as left brainers is mostly historical, where with the right brainers, I feel is mostly sort of future looking, more sort of visualization of the future. The other area of work that I think we also need to work on it's a relationship with risk. Okay, I believe that the left brain folks like to calculate the risk, and usually they just do a mathematical equation, and if the reward exceeds the risk, that's where they draw the line on how much risk they want to take, and they only want to do predictable sort of work, something where the risks are mitigated. Whereas I feel something I appreciate a lot about the right brain folks is the right brain folks tend to want to experiment, and all art is unknown. All art is a discovery process, so it's a huge risk to present something that came out of nowhere. I mean, there's no formula for it. There's no ending for it. It's a sort of an infinite process. So I think that these two worlds have to sort of bridge and balance this relationship with work and risk, and learn from each other in terms of how we take the best traits of each other to just to improve ourselves individually.
Yeah. So here's the thing. If you are, I think there's a spectrum here. So let's just kind of define the two ends of the spectrum. If you're far left, maybe you're the most logical person, and the only person I can think of is like you're like a pure Vulcan. Not even Spock, because Spock is at least half human. You're just a pure Vulcan, and any emotion is considered weakness. And then you go all the way in the far right, and you're the super most emotional human being. I don't know who that is. Maybe you're a Klingon. It's just pure emotion. And it's just, it's either love or anger or hate, whatever it is. And every one of us fits somewhere in that spectrum in between. And I think if we can learn to work with both parts of our brain, then we can be much more successful. We can be much more creative. So a creative person doesn't have to be poor and starving. And a left brain logical person doesn't have to be devoid of creativity and art and inspiration, and maybe can come up with more innovative ideas. They're more risk tolerant. I think that's a beautiful place to live in. Now, Daniel Pink writes about in his book, A Whole New Mind. He talks about how right-brainers will rule the world. And it's because we're facing very wicked challenges, wicked problems, persistent problems that need out-of-the-box thinking. And he has a famous TED Talk where he talks about this candle test, I believe, where you're trying to build a shelf to hold a candle. He says, whenever you put money or time against it, people tend not to think very clearly. It's like the left-brainers start to rule. I'm messing up this example, but somebody will correct me in the chat, I'm sure of it. Whereas if you leave it kind of open and you take away the pressure of time and money, right-brainers do really well. And he talks about like all the kinds of problems that are facing companies, communities, cultures, and even the planet. We got to move away from this narrow, convergent way of thinking, that there are multiple solutions and we can work together. And I believe he's right. If you look at some of the entrepreneurs who have the greatest impact in the world right now, they're very much divergent thinkers. They think of a solution and then they find a way to build a community or a product around it. So I want to take this back a little bit. So if you are here and you're a creative person and you're listening, it's like, Chris, make this tangible, make this practical for me to apply. I'm going to share two ideas with you. So if you have a pen, go grab it right now. Okay, so you got your pen, right? So the first concept I want to share with you is this. A lot of people think this, like, why would I make content? If I make content, doesn't that dilute my secret sauce if I share the goods? So a lot of creative people tend not to show their secret sauce. They don't want to let you know what the 11 herbs and spices are in their chicken. They don't want to tell you what the secret formula in Coke is. And so they tend to show you things that they feel pretty confident you cannot decipher. And in a way, they build some audience and awareness around this because their whole idea behind creating content is to get a sale, to attract a client. But what they start to find out is as they show more of the creative process, they can just get more creatives following them and zero clients. And this is a problem. It's a challenge for a number of ways. But let me just try to give you a better way of thinking about this and how you can create content that actually build something much more valuable than a lead in the short term. Okay? There's a concept that I've been reading about recently, and that was picked up from I believe the May-June issue of the Harvard Business Review. On the front of the cover, it says something about personal branding. So of course, when I saw it at the newsstand, I'm like, I got to buy this right now. But it wasn't the personal branding article that caught my attention. It was the article that preceded it. It talked about the need for performance marketing, which is what you see everywhere. Direct mail, email marketing campaign, ad campaigns, just anything that's designed to move the needle, to increase conversion or get a sale sell products, things like that. That's called performance marketing. It's kind of what you see everywhere. And there's a lot of excitement around it, and there's a lot of attention given to it. Many of the events and conferences that you go to will try to teach you how to increase or improve your performance marketing. But what they say is too much performance marketing comes at a cost of long-term brand value. And so brand value is kind of amorphous. It's like, what is branding and what is the value attached to that? Many of you who work in branding, brand identity, brand design, those kinds of things, have a hard time justifying to your clients why they should pay you so much money. And you just can't figure it out. It's because you have very soft metrics. It's like awareness or engagement, and not very many people care about that. So the article goes into a much deeper conversation about ways that you can measure brand value. And so you set up this equation, this balance beam, if you will. On the far left, it's performance marketing. On the far right, it's brand building. So performance marketing is great for short-term revenue, whereas brand building is great for long-term value. And sometimes revenue comes at the cost of value. If you think about a lot of companies that you have an emotional, irrational attachment to, they've done a great job of building brand, for which you will pay a premium for. And then there are some companies who have a too high a focus on short-term revenue, and they have almost no long-term brand value. And they're not the companies that we will pay more for. In fact, they almost always compete on price. Like, for example, Walmart and Costco really sell things at a discount for different reasons, right? They're the low price leader, and you go there because of that. There's not an emotional attachment. You're not going to pay more for something at Walmart. It makes no sense whatsoever. But as soon as you move into the mid to high end luxury goods, all of a sudden you rationalize to yourself, you post-rationalize purely based on an emotional reaction. I want an iPhone. I want that fancy handbag, and I just need it. Really, you don't need it. You just want it because the brand has been built and the long-term value has been established. And historically speaking, they tend to outperform on a numbers basis their market cap based on the brand that they've built. Okay, so you need to understand that performance marketing and brand building, a little bit different. So if you approach your social media content, whatever it is that you're posting out there as a form of performance marketing, you do realize something. It's coming at the cost of building brand value. I don't know about you. I have friends who are thought leaders in different industries, and I follow them. It's a courtesy follow. You know, they follow me, I follow them. Makes a lot of sense. But I got to tell you, they post 7 or 8 times a day, maybe even more than that. And 80 to 90% of their posts are just pure marketing plays. They're asking for something always. It's like, sign up for this, buy this, DM me for this. It's just constantly asking something from me. And I got to tell you, it's wearing me down. And if I didn't have a professional relationship with them, I would just unfollow them because it's just too much. So there is something that's going on here, right? But how can we build content, attract an audience, and to give freely to kind of activate this whole idea of karmic equity, and that the more good you put out into the world, the more good comes back to you. You want to be rich in that sense, and there's compounding returns on that as well, while still feeding yourself, because if it's pure value, at some point you're going to say to yourself, but I have no work, and now I'm starving, and this is really bad business advice. I think you can feel that, right? So there's an idea here, is if you create content that's aligned with an offer, if the content is so good, you won't actually even have to ask people. They'll just inquire. And this has happened to me over and over again. I'll look at some illustrator drawing some beautiful, and I've just recently did this, like a crosshatch illustration, like a woodcut line drawing. And I just look at their process like, this is so beautiful. And it's just so complicated, and they're so good. I just wonder how much they would charge. And so I just reach out to someone and say, how much you charge to do this? They float me a price. I'm like, this is excellent. Now they have a customer, and they weren't even trying to market to me or to anybody. They just wanted to show what they do. And so you'll see this happen time and time again. If I were to show you a process of how to set up a DM chat automation robot to help you stay in touch with people in ways that feel organic, to create lead forms, to be able to direct people towards the right products and services, after an hour seminar of that, you might just say to me, that was excellent. I need to hire you to consult me to do this because I don't really want to do all that work. I don't know. How many of you have experienced that before where someone has shown you something, is so masterful at doing it, your first reaction isn't, well, now I'm going to go do it and I'm going to steal all your business. Your first reaction is, I need to just hire them, right? And so this fear that we have around creating content to give value freely to people, it scares us because we think there goes all our opportunities, when in fact the opposite happens. Thanks, Annalie, for the reaction there. I know I do it, so maybe I'm the only person to Annalie. There's only a handful of us, right? Everybody else, you see something, then you just figure out how to do it yourself. Yeah, I don't think so, but okay. So this is a very important concept. I need you to understand this. If you are able to create content that serves the community and you give freely, openly, with no strings attached, you don't try to hide anything, you will actually have more clients and customers than you could ever know what to do with. The key thing here is when you create content that's aligned around with the product or service that you have. That will lead me to a problem that we have as the future, which I think we found a solution for. But I'll talk more about that later. I'll pause here, throw it over to Hector. Hector, what do you have?
Okay. Wow, that's a lot. Very, very important. Thank you for triggering this concept of content creation. So when I first created my YouTube channel, I was doing videos for the strict purpose of getting small business owners, customers, to call me because they were impressed what I was doing, right? And they were like, and exactly what you're saying. I want them to think, wow, this person is the expert at this. I should hire them. But the immediate sort of group of followers that I got were other accountants trying to learn how to do what I do. And my first reaction was, well, hold on a second. Why am I training my competition? And it's true that was happening, but something else was happening sort of in the background. It wasn't tangible at the moment, which is I had an army of colleagues that knew I specialized in one very specific thing that many people were not specializing on. I was specializing in inventory management for small manufacturers using QuickBooks Enterprise, a very specific thing. So while, yes, I was teaching my competitors how to do what I do and helping people leap years worth of experience simply by watching me summarize my learnings in a video, I was starting to get referrals from colleagues that they started dabbling in maybe the things that they were learning from me, but then they ran into a client that was basically a notch above them, and they wanted to serve the client correctly, and they already felt like they owed me something because I taught them something, I gave them something for free. So immediately they would go, you know what? I think you should work with my mentor. I think you should work with the expert. And by the way, most professionals are very stingy about giving referrals because they're sort of afraid that the referral might go bad. That happens quite a bit. But when you give somebody a referral that has a couple of videos showing you what they do, if something goes wrong, hey, listen, Mr. Customer, you could have watched the videos. You had a full preview of who the person was, how they spoke, their style, their skill set. So it makes it so much easier for people to refer you business when you have this sort of like business card in YouTube with tutorials kind of showing you your process. The other piece that I've learned quite deeply from this, and this took me a while to learn, is that I love going to restaurants where the kitchen is exposed. So let me break that down. Some restaurants, you don't see the kitchen. Other restaurants, you see the kitchen, right? You see it. It's most likely there's a window of sorts. But a restaurant that exposes the kitchen has to do something much, much different than a one that doesn't. Number one, it needs to be really clean in there, right? Where restaurants that don't expose the kitchen, they're not see-through to the customers, don't really need to. So that means that restaurant's level of standards for care of the food and cleanliness, it's way up, a bunch of levels up. And the marginal cost for the restaurant to invest into that, it's minuscule compared to the marginal price they can charge. Because most restaurants with exposed kitchens, and not fast food restaurants, like sit-down restaurants, are more expensive than the ones with a covered kitchen. For that reason, you have more staff, more guidelines, more of that. In our world, in accounting or in graphic design, whatever it is, you can do videos where you're exposing your kitchen. You can say, hey, let me show you how I work with small business owners. in designing a logo. And then maybe you're not doing a tutorial on how to do a logo. Maybe your video could be, let's just assume the use case of somebody that does logos for a living. Say, let me show you how I work with the business owner to do a logo. So the first thing I do is I ask the business owner these 10 key questions. And then based on these 10 key questions, I understand whether or not I'm a good fit. Then what I do is I go back to the drawing board and I give that person 3 styles, let's say whatever it is, 3 styles. So I know I can kind of understand what their taste looks like. And then maybe you can just do sort of fast action, or what do you call that, time lapse of you building the styles. Like you don't have to tell people, this is where you separate the lines. This is where you modify the font. And pardon me for not using the right lingo, but you don't have to go step by step like every click you do in Photoshop. You can time lapse, 30 minutes of you creating 3 sort of template styles, and then say, and this is what I show my customer. Then I have a conversation about, which styles they like and why, and I try to understand with some very abstract questions how the customer feels about, sharp corners versus rounded corners, reds versus blues, whatever. And then based on that, I come back and I propose, an entire package. And then when the customer tells me what the package they want, then I go back to the drawing board and actually build it. And then you can time lapse. Again, you can time lapse to 4 hours worth of work of you building that logo. And then we expose the logo, and then we have a couple of meetings where we talk about making modifications, this and that, and I do the modifications. And again, you could essentially do a tutorial video on how to run a logo design business sales process without showing people how to actually design a logo. And to an end customer, that's a lot more interesting, right? I don't go to a restaurant with an exposed kitchen because I want to walk into the kitchen and ask the person, okay, show me how you flambe the egg or whatever. I don't know, right? So I don't do that. I go there because I like to see all the motion, see all the cooks, see people working. I love to see the orchestra and the art and the dance of a beautifully managed kitchen that's eventually going to give me this great plate of food. But I don't have to sit down with the chef. I have to be walked through step by step. So when you think about content creation, it's not just tutorials for your colleagues, right? So sometimes it's just understand how to interact with a professional like me. And that could be a total game changer. Like when I started doing that in my videos, it was a total game changer, and I started attracting actual end users.
All right, thanks for sharing that, Hector. Now, before Hector was just clarifying on this idea of an open kitchen, which I like a lot. It gives people a preview into the process of how you do what you do. And it's a great way to generate interest in what you do. And ultimately, if you're willing to play this game long enough, I believe, like I said before, this has worked for me. It may not work for you, but it's worked for me and people that I know. It seems to work really well. Okay. Concept number 2 I'm going to share with you is something that comes from Russell Brunson's book, .com Secrets. And it's something I've struggled with, everybody. Full transparency. And in this book, there's a lot of very useful things. It's a best-selling book. But he talks about this idea of the full value ladder. He goes, whenever somebody goes into your funnel, if you will, he's a funnel expert, they may not want to buy what you're selling, whatever the offer is. It might be too much or it might be too little. So you need to design a full value ladder, starting from free all the way up to your most expensive high ticket item or offer, whatever that might be. And to each person, it's going to sound a little bit different. For me, my high ticket offer might be my brand lab, or it might be a one-on-one coaching session with me, which is $5,000 an hour. It's not for everybody. At the bottom of the value ladder is all the free content that we put out there. Webinars, workshops, whatever it is that we do that's free. We do meetups, fireside chats. Those things are mostly free, and it goes all the way up the ladder. Now, the problem with this ladder, and the reason why I struggled with it, you're like, dude, that's such an easy concept. Why can't you master that? Is because those products need to be connected. It's not just that you have one product that's $39, $399, and $39,000. It's that they have to be kind of related. That way, somebody wants to get the easiest, simplest version of what you do. And for many people, it'll be an article or a video that you've created. If you step up from that, it might be a $20 book that you can buy, but it's the same content. It's aligned, right? So, and there's probably an audiobook that's in between, or an ebook. And then maybe there's a course, a self-study course of the same content. And then there's a 2-day in-person workshop. And then there might be like a one-on-one coaching, a package of 6 calls that might be as much as $100,000 or even more. But they're aligned. So this way, the customer is interested in what you have, and it decides for themselves what version of interaction they want to have with you. Now, for me, the way I learn the best, and because I'm an introvert, mostly a visual processing person, I like to just read books. I like to reread sentences. I like to just savor the words, the phraseology. I just like the way that words are put together. I find that when I listen to audiobooks, it doesn't stick. Half an hour later, I don't know what I just listened to. Whereas it's hard for me to read a book, to be focused on reading a book and not remember what I read. That works best for me. I also feel like sometimes when I go to workshops, the person who's covering the content, it's not produced in such a way that's as good as their book. So I just go back to the book. And that's just me. Plus, social interaction freaks me out a little bit. So that's me. But I know that other people love workshops. They like the interaction. They want to get their hands dirty. And I love that about them. So if I'm a person who wants to serve a diverse community of people, whether you're left brain or right brain, however you identify, then I need to be able to provide the same product in different flavors or different ways at different price points so they can choose what's best for them. I hope that makes sense. All right. So how does this work in the real world? Well, for a long time, we have this coaching community, group coaching community. It's called the Pro Group. Today, it's $249 a month. It used to be free. It just slowly ratcheted up in value because I believe the price has to reflect the value that you promise. Okay. Sometimes when the price is below the value that you promise, people get really suspicious and like, nah, this is not real. This is no good. This is too low priced. Okay. And that's all we had. So our full value ladder was just one offering. And so recently we've added 2 rungs to the ladder in case the Pro Group doesn't work for you. And then we have to clearly define each product and how they're different from each other. Otherwise, people are like, well, why don't I just go with your lowest price option? So allow me to explain. So the Pro Group is for any entrepreneur that is making between $100,000 and would like, or making $100,000 or more, and is working towards $1 million. So you have to have certain skill sets already in place. As a Pro member, you need help with lead gen or to amplify what you're doing. You need help with sales and closing calls, objection handling. You need to figure out how to write an irresistible offer. You want to take your content marketing to the next level. You need pricing strategies, and you probably need some mindset stuff and some networking opportunities. You're mostly an autodidact, meaning you're a self-learner. You want high-level concepts. You don't need A, B, C, D, E steps. You don't need all that. Step by step is not for you, okay? I'm mostly creating the Pro Group for people just like me. And then we have a group called the Accelerator, and that's $99 a month. So that's a big price difference between the two. $99 versus $250. An Accelerator is for only creative people, creative service professionals who are yet to crack $100,000, haven't yet made 6 figures. They need a whole different level of help. Their needs and wants are very different than the Pro Group. They need systems and processes. They need tactical step-by-step information. They get portfolio reviews. They need help with messaging and positioning, basically the fundamentals of how to grow a business. They don't have that mastered yet. So they get opportunities every once in a while, not consistently enough, and they're not getting the full value of the opportunity. So Ben Burns and Stephanie run the Accelerator group, and so that makes a lot of sense. Now, there's a tier that lives above the Pro Group, which is called the Brand Lab, and something that's brand new that we're launching, and that's at a much higher price point. We don't sell it monthly, but it's about $3,000 a month or $18,000 for 6 months, right? That's really how we're selling it. And it's for anybody that's an entrepreneur, mostly left brain entrepreneurs who are $1 million plus. And you can imagine if you've been able to make $1 million in your business, you've mastered lots of things. So to have those conversations that are mixed up between the Pro Group and the Brand Lab, it would be very confusing and pretty frustrating for one group or the other. And so what I've learned is if you're able to narrow your market and create a product just for them, it'll serve them better. And I'll tell you more about that later. But so now you can see the full value ladder concept applied within one product line. Accelerator for anyone who makes less than $100,000 who wants to get past that and needs help there. Pro Group, which is for anyone from $100,000 to $1 million who wants to get to that $1 million. They probably have a couple people working for them. And then the Brand Lab is for anyone who is doing $1 million plus in revenue a year. And they need a whole different level of help. And I'll describe that a little bit later. Okay, so hopefully you understand that. That's a concept. So look at your product offering right now. So if you design logos, bespoke logos, that might be your highest tiered option. What is the middle tier and what is the low tier? Or it could be the exact opposite where I need to do something much bigger, and I'll show you how that works. Say you're a logo identity designer. So you design logos, that would be your bottom tier. Your middle tier would be an identity system with a brand style guide. This would include usage, like how rules, do's and don'ts, if you will, different applications for social media, a whole system around a logo. And your third tier might be to incorporate messaging, positioning, including brand strategy. So that would be your most expensive option. And you can keep going up. It doesn't have to be 3. But there's something that I need you to know about why I presented 3 things to you. One is because you're activating price anchoring. Now, if you're listening to this, some of you will say, well, $18,000 is too much for me. Pro sounds really good at $249. It's super affordable. And the reason why you might say that or think that is because when you see the number 18,000 next to 249 seems like a bargain. Or Accelerator seems like a bargain compared to Pro because it's less than half. So you activate the power of anchoring, price anchoring to be specific. And there's something that Blair Enns had said to me. He says creatives can make more money if they just do this one thing, offer options. Don't just present one option, present multiple. 2 is better than 1, 3 is better than 2, and 4 might be better than 3, but 3 is a good number. To have 3 options. That way someone can look at your full service offering and say, well, the middle option seems really good to me. And if you look at any of the e-com sites, if you look at Apple's website and you look at how they sell their products, it's almost always with 3 options, good, better, and best. And most people will pick the middle option. That's how price anchoring works. So if you're able to activate this concept within your business, it'll be easier to sell. You'll have less friction, and you'll probably sell more of what it is that you want to sell. So I'll pause there while I read some of the messages that came through. Hector, how do you want to add to this?
Okay, I have tons of notes, Chris. That was so much good information there. I'm going to sort of go backwards here. So with the 3 pricing options, what I found, it's a lot of your competition, a lot of your colleagues, they might offer only one option. So if they're looking at you and 2 other colleagues, they have a, let's say, 33% chance that they'll pick you. But if you offer 3 and 2 of your colleagues only offer 1, now you have 3 out of 5. You have a 60% chance that they'll pick something from you. So what it allows you is just sort of to be another bid, another option within usually the finite group of options that the customer has when they're out there trying to procure a professional, whether it's a creative or graphic designer, doesn't really matter. The other comment I had here when it comes to the concept of the tiers, Chris, you didn't mention that there are some pre-tiers to your core offering, right? So some of the pre-tiers you have, for example, is your book. You could buy a book, and a lot of the things that Chris will teach are basically repetitions of the book. And there's specific reasons why people want to learn from a group mastermind type of setting versus just reading a book. And there's also the YouTube channel and the podcast. So you can have your core offering, and then prior to your core offering, you can have both a very, very low cost option, and simultaneously, it's also your main source of marketing. And I think where we missed this opportunity quite a bit is we have our 3 options. They're all options that are sort of within the core offering or what we charge or we want to charge. And then we have our marketing, and we don't have this sort of pathway, entryway, like get your foot in the door into my world, because you want the best possible customer that is in the best possible fit for the offering that you have. But not every customer that runs into you, it's ready to buy from you at that moment. They could be too big and you need to wait until they shrink, or they could be too small and you need to wait until they grow. And the challenge is, if you don't have a passive offering, it doesn't have to be something that you actually sell, but it could be something as simple as, like I said, a podcast, a book, an ebook, a blog, or your YouTube channel, whatever it is, where they can start subscribing to you, connecting to you. And then when they're ready, when they're in the best possible situation to work with you, they will be right there. So those are the two comments I have from what you said, Chris. And then we have I had a direct message from Kofi, and Kofi is a writing consultant. He helps people write their first books, right? Like if you're an aspiring author and you want to write your first book, you would work with him to help you get there. But Kofi is selling essentially a creative service, right? Because writing is a creative service. So his question was, and then Kofi, will you unmute and bring that up? His question was, hey, I'm selling this sort of creative service, and how do I convince people of the value of the potential that I have to bring this creative, difficult to measure type of service or product, so people are comfortable paying for it. So Kofi, you can unmute yourself and maybe add to that, and then Chris and I will attempt to answer your question.
So my background is executive coaching, and I've had so many experience with dealing with not being able to charge people because I just felt so horrible after I charged them for having a conversation with them.
What is the question,
I'm
please?
sorry, but
No worries.
my question is to know how I can help my clients or prospects see the value of what I'm bringing to the table.
Okay.
And I try to
I
put
got you.
the context so you can, yeah.
No, we got it. Usually people make the same mistake, and they try to give us so much information without leading with a question. And you have to remember, both Hector and I, our combined work experience is probably over 60 years. And so we kind of have heard the same question or problem before. And sometimes we'll need a clarifying question before we can answer. Hector, do you have enough information to be able to answer this question?
Yeah. Look, I think Kofi, and this is I'm being as transparent with you as possible. So leading with a backstory without the context of the person wanting you to lead with the backstory is probably part of the problem. Okay. So the most valuable piece in this conversation to us, the way we framed it, was, hey, can you ask us your question about being a left brain creative or a right brain creative or whatever it is. So then we can go straight to the answer. So I think the fact that you might have to feel that you had to structure the conversation by adding all these sort of backstories could essentially be maybe possibly what's stopping you from being successful in selling your value, right? So you want to lead with what the person that you're talking to wants you to discuss. Okay, so that would be number one. And number two, I think the most valuable thing you could do is possibly take a customer where you had a Zoom call or something and ask your customer, hey, can I use you as a use case? Take the Zoom call where you onboarded them, cut it in such a way where people get a full understanding of what you went through and exactly what you sell, like your skill sets that you sell. And then maybe show people a link to the Amazon link where they can buy the book that has been published. So you have a very specific way you can show tangibility in your services, which is you help the first author publish a book. So if you have authors that you help publish a book, show people the book that you published. Maybe you buy the book, right, for $25 or $30 or whatever, and you ship it to the person that you're trying to sell your $10,000 service to, right? And they say, hey, check out the book. And by the way, I highlighted my contributions, whether it's a table of content or this and that. Like you have actual work products you can show. So like that would be my answer. Like that's how you can show value really quickly for people that you're offering your services to.
All right. I have some questions for you, Kofi. How much do you charge to do your writing service?
I charge $10,000 for the entire process.
Okay. Your question, I'm going to answer your question. It's specific to you, but also in a way that everybody here can understand, I hope, which is how do I make my prospect aware of the value that I create for them, where 10,000 seems to be a bargain. Okay. And this is a pretty common question, believe it or not, which is you provide a service and you're trying to find the wrong customers because the right customers already see the value in what it is that you do. So if I've never thought about publishing and writing my own book, then you're not trying to sell to me. You're trying to sell to people who already want to write a book, who are frustrated or think the process takes too long or need help, and they already see the value. So I would try to figure out where those people are and then just make your stuff available to them. So you're dealing with a couple different things. There's a stage that everybody goes through. One is, are they problem aware? Are they aware that they have a problem? So if I don't think I want to write a book, no amount of content that you make for me will make me like, oh yeah, I really want that. The only way that you can start to do that, and it's very expensive and takes a long time to do, which is you start to educate people why writing a book is helpful for their career, for their communication, for promotion in their workplace, or to help them to build brand authority. So you'll spend a lot of time and energy making people aware of the problem. I think you want to focus on people who are more solution aware. Like, what are the solutions available to me? Ghostwriting services, consulting, having you as a great editor, whatever the process is. So now they're aware that I need to write a book. What are the options available to me? So then the solution phase, and they're looking for a solution. So this is usually where you want it to be. And if they already know that they need a ghostwriter to help them write their book, then it becomes now that they have a product awareness problem, which is now you just list your price, your services, you talk about how long it takes to do and what examples look like that you've done in the past. And so there's a migration from problem aware, solution aware to product aware. You have to know where they are in the stream because you cannot talk to them in the same way. Russell Brunson, oddly enough, talks about this. He said most people fail in building sales pages because they treat cold traffic the way they would treat hot traffic. So there's cold, warm, and hot, and it's designed to be exactly to address each one of these problems. Cold is like, what is the problem? Warm is what is the solution? And hot is how much and how long. So I think you need to align yourself with who you need to speak to. Now, this doesn't matter if you're left brain or right brain, if you're creative or analytical, it doesn't matter. It's the same problem. So when we try to fish for too big of a market, we're in the problem awareness and we're educating the whole market, and we can spend a lot of time and money there. Here are some famous examples. When Facebook changed their name to Meta, all of a sudden people became super aware of the word meta space, this other thing between physical and digital, whatever that might be. And there was a lot of buzz for about a year and a half. A lot of people went into it head first, lost a lot of money because they were going to be the company that would bring a lot of awareness to the problem. Prior to that minute in which they said, meta space, metaverse, nobody was talking about it at all. And so you can see, if you look at the financial reports, they've spent a lot of money. I should say they've lost a lot of money. And definitely, I don't know if you want to be in that space, okay? So find where your customers are. They're mostly thought leaders, they're coaches, they're strategists, they're executives, they're C-suite executives, and they want to write a book. That's who you want to focus in on. If you could do that, the selling process becomes very easy. I honestly think $10,000 is pretty affordable to write a book, especially if you're good. So the way that you can show there's value in this is to show a book that you've written before. You can show what you were given, the results of which, and once the book's been published, what that has done for the person's career. Now they're able to get top billing for keynote speaking engagements. They were promoted. They were able to sell 2x more courses on what they're doing, or they're able to grow their social following by 300,000 based on the content from the book itself. Those are very measurable, quantifiable. So focus on that, okay?
Thank you so much, Chris. I really appreciate it.
Okay, here we go. Hector, is there anything you want to say quickly before I go into this?
No, on the book writing thing, just the only thing I wanted to add is I think you gotta emphasize on specifically after the person wrote the book, because you helped them wrote the book, how did their life change? Like that's it. That's everything. Okay, because if you say book $10,000, we're looking at two tangible things. But when we say imagine you in like this person, when you tell people to visualize and think of themselves as getting keynotes, being invited into podcasts, charging more per hour because they're a published author, etc., that's the key. The key is what transformation did you deliver after doing the left brain work. You did left brain work, you delivered transformation, but in order to imagine that transformation, you have to enable right brain thinking. So that's I think that's just a beautiful place where these two concepts merge.
All right. Now let me tell you exactly kind of where we're netting out on Brand Lab and why it's been created. And perhaps you'll agree or disagree with me after I give you the full explanation as to what's going on. And you may decide, hey, this is something I need or I need help with, or you might decide, no, this is not for me at all. Okay, so for I think since 2014, I've been making content mostly for creative people, or I should say exclusively for creative people, either teaching them design, typography, identity systems, branding. And then I found that the thing that they got most excited about was when I started to do pricing strategies, pricing theory, objection handling. Those are the most viewed pieces of content on our channel overall. So I focused the last 9 or so years just teaching business skills to creative people. Mostly because, like I said at the beginning of the hour, there are very few people in the creative space that actually talk about it, want to talk about it, enjoy talking about it, and go as deep as I'd like to go, who have some real experience in doing it. And so that's where I spent most of my time, and that's where our community has gathered around. And that's fine. And we've been able to build a multi-million-dollar company doing this, and I'm super thrilled about that. But I'm starting to notice certain patterns that creative people, for a number of different reasons, because they're divergent thinkers, have unhealthy relationships with money. Also, because they're divergent thinkers, think that, well, that's one way you can do it, but I'm going to do it this way. So they're not exactly the best students in the world. As an instructor, as a person who identifies as an educator, it's frustrating for me. I'm trying to teach people how to do what it is that they need to do to live a life that's sustainable, doing what they love. And it's very difficult. And it's really strange how some of the lessons click with certain people and not at all with other people. So I'm doing that, and I'm going to continue to do that, and none of that is changing. And here's the weird thing. And this is where it gets kind of odd for me, where a guy named Neil Dingra, who I have a relationship with, I was on his podcast many years ago. He invites me to speak at his conference, his Forward event for his mastermind, a group of about 100 people. And he asked me to speak about personal branding. And I was a little confused. I was like, personal branding? He's like, yeah, just do your personal branding talk, man. And he just said like, yeah, it's no big deal. But here I am thinking, okay, easy for you to say. I'm going to do this whole thing on creativity. What are all these mortgage brokers, loan officers, and realtors, these far left-brained people, what do they want with any of this? And to my surprise, when I did my presentation, they were so hungry. They were aggressive. They were asking questions. I could tell they're leaning in. As soon as I got off stage, people are approaching me in the hallway at the table and asking me questions. And here's the remarkable difference between me speaking at a creative conference and me speaking at a business conference, if you will, quote unquote, is that at a creative conference, people are like, oh, hey, we just want to say hi. We're fans. Can we take a picture? All that's good. I love that. But at the business conference, they come up to you and say, what can I buy from you? I want to buy something from you right now. And I was taken aback. I was not prepared because I don't usually try to sell off the stage or sell on the stage. So I was like, oh my gosh. And so it really made me rethink my business model. And I've been thinking of it in a very different way. I've been looking at it like I'm teaching business skills to creative people so they can have a seat at the table with business people, to be bilingual, right? I'll teach you the language of business so you can be conversant and fluent in the language of business. I didn't realize there's this whole other market that are business-oriented people, left-brainers, who actually have this deep urge or desire to be creative, to come out and play, to break out their set of crayons and make stuff. And I was really kind of fascinated by this group. Now, I mentioned that I identify as an educator, so I am just looking for really good students to work with. I think I've done as much as I can in the creative space. Of course, I could do more, but I'm starting to like, oh, what else can I do? Running out of tricks here to talk about money and pricing, right? But there's this whole other group. I'm like, wow, I don't now see it as it's us versus them. It's just all us. We're all left and right brain to different degrees on the spectrum. And all these creative skills, things I used to teach at art school, I haven't taught in a long time. I'm ready to teach those to a market that really is just hungry for it. They're starving for it, actually. And so I go back into to my cave, have conversations with Ben and the team, and we start talking about like, how do we serve these people? What is it they really want? And as far as I can tell, Hector, here's what I've come up with. And it's going to evolve. It's going to change a little bit because I'm still figuring out this audience, this community. The more time I spend with them, the more I figure out what they want. But these people already run successful businesses. They have teams that work with them. They're trying to establish their thought leadership to stand out from the crowd, because in a undifferentiated market, they're just one of 1,000, and they need to do something to be a little bit different. On a very base level, they need to look different. They need to sound different. They need to speak different, because otherwise they just get mixed up with everybody else. And as you can imagine, if you're in the mortgage space, you have your asset that you're selling, or so you think, is a really good interest rate. And so if that's what you're competing on, then whoever has the lowest interest rate will win. But as it's turned out, when I worked with my realtor, it wasn't because he gave me the best price. It's because he had the best relationship with me, built on customer service and long-term investment in the relationship. I've known him for decades. And so when I was ready to sell my house, it was zero consideration on who we'd call. We'd call Robert. And that's who we wound up hiring. So if you want to develop that kind of relationship with your customers, built on excellent customer service, a great product, clear messaging, long-term value giving and creation, then that's what I'm here to help people with. So we thought about this. And this really came into focus when I was talking to Neil. Neil had just produced this big event in Las Vegas for 1,000 people called the Forward event. And I made all these kinds of notes, from the way that he planned the curriculum, the different speakers, to the breaks, to the design, to the messaging, and all that stuff. And I jumped on the phone with Neil for an hour and a half. I just gave him all my notes and said, I believe you have a rare opportunity here to be heads and shoulders above every single other person in your space running events like this. And he and his team, we were chatting over Zoom. I just gave him all these notes. And I was thinking, I wonder if other creative or left brain entrepreneurs who are poised for growth, who have a team, who are ready to invest, want some level of feedback, creative direction that they can only get from something like this unless they want to bring on somebody full-time on staff. One of the things that Neil told me about a guy who works with him named Trevor is he goes, I love having Trevor around. Trevor is a super smart young guy. He's under 30 and he's so creative. He has so many ideas. And I was thinking about that. Trevor, I imagine, is one of few people in Neil's world that is a creative person, and he's enjoying the dialogue, the conversation, the brainstorming sessions. And I thought, well, Trevor is a young man. I'm a guy who has 4 times as much experience as Trevor. I wonder what value I could provide to entrepreneurs, to left brain thinkers, to help ignite their creativity, to set their brains on fire, and to activate all the opportunities for differentiation within their category. From messaging, positioning, to design, to their events or their keynote talk, whatever it is, how they show up on social media, how they even dress or the way they look. So some part of that is like, I think I can fulfill that market. And that's where BrandLab is right now. It is not me turning my back on creative people. And people think, what? Well, Chris, you are leaving us. I'm like, I'm not leaving you. Because I offer more products to more people doesn't mean I'm leaving anybody. But here's where I think it gets really interesting. These left brain entrepreneurs don't have deep resources to creative people. Well, you know who does? I do. I have hundreds of them, maybe thousands of them. And if I can connect talented, hardworking, ethical, creative people with entrepreneurs who need creative services, I think I've solved another problem here. Now, it's not that I haven't been doing this. I have, because people still reach out to me today for creative work, which I then float into the program. But what if this were a more predictable, ongoing thing with vetted clients already? Don't we serve both communities there? And this is where I think there's some real excitement. But I'll pause there. Okay, so Hector, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, the first thing I could think of is as an accountant myself, as someone that is never going to sort of be fully creative, like I'm going to be a left brain person for the rest of my career, but I want to dabble and be exposed to it. It's because I am done chasing the profits from a pure numerical, analytical point of view. I think that once business owners become successful, and success is measured in different ways in different countries and different amounts of money for different people. But I believe that once you've had certain level of success, numerical financial success, and you're chasing after that, you get to the point that without making a major transformation in what your overall purpose is for your business, you might sort of be stuck there or be just growing very slowly. I think all businesses, in order to make major leaps and bounds above what they've been able to maximize and squeeze out, especially from a left brain perspective, maximizing every possible nook and cranny that I could see within my client base, within lowering costs, whatever. The next step really is for the entrepreneur to have more of a purpose-driven uh, uh, life when it comes to running their business. Have a personal transformation where they're most focused on self-actualization versus profitability. And when people are in that just really sort of abstract state of mind, sometimes they could eureka, they could have eureka and they go, I know exactly what I need to do. I need to do this and that. But I think that so many times our inner purpose, what we want to essentially do, who we want to be, the impact that we want to change or affect in the world, is not something that can be easily calculated. And sometimes we need help, and I tell you from personal experience, we need help defining that message, defining that purpose, and looking for the words and the language that we needed to connect what we are feeling inside versus what we want to say and what we want to communicate. And many people probably do this on their own and they were born with it. A person like Steve Jobs, I don't know his personal life, obviously. He might have just been born with this greater sense of purpose. Or maybe he had an incredible mentor in his life or a group of mentors that helped extract that vision and purpose that made Apple not just a profitable computer company, a meaningful brand in the world. And I think that what you're aiming towards, Chris, and I'm hoping that's what it is, and as a candidate for Brand Lab myself, is you're going to help us discover that's already within us, but use all the power of your network and your experience to get us to think in these abstract thoughts in its maximum level, and then so we're going to be purely creative, and then bring us back to our roots, to turn that into language, turn that into a purpose statement, a positioning statement, turn it into the specific words and the specific actions that we're going to take to change culturally the way people see us or see our business or see our brand, through that sort of internal transformation and personal transformation. So that's kind of what I'm understanding and envisioning from this. And if that's what it is, I'm just super excited about it.
It is, and it's more than that. So I'll say that. You mentioned Steve Jobs, Hector. Do you know the thing that Steve cites as a thing that transformed the way he looked at the world? I mean, there's many things, but the one thing that stuck out to me was when he said he was in college, he took a calligraphy class. It made him really appreciate design and beauty. And an entrepreneur who understands the difference, the nuance, the subtlety of something that's well crafted, who has really good taste, I think is a powerful person. And I talk about this quite a bit within my own family, that a skill set that will be super valuable in the 21st century, in the age of artificial intelligence, is someone who has taste. Someone who has good taste in writing, good taste in music and design, architecture, and image making. Because if the machine can make anything, that doesn't mean everybody's going to be great. It just means that the people have a deep understanding of history as it relates to whatever they want to explore, and who can discern good from bad to great. Those are the people who are going to be on top. And I really believe that. And so each and every single entrepreneur who wants that kind of help, whether you're running an event, whether you're running a workshop, or you're talking about your position, your messaging, your logo, or your personal style, if you want help with that, this is the first time I'm going to be able to give feedback on any real level where I can have somebody sit in a hot seat and just sit down and do a deep dive with them. And the idea behind the Brand Lab is you're not supposed to be on every call. You're a busy entrepreneur. You have a business to run. You have a family to spend time with, or you have fun things you want to do. But when you have a challenge and you want to present it as within the hot seat coaching thing, I just do a deep dive, whether it's looking at your website, looking at your positioning, where we can brainstorm together and share that. Now, that might be of interest to other people who don't have that specific problem. Say, for example, you're going to do a keynote talk and other people have no interest in doing a keynote talk. And we do this 90-minute call where I'm going to go deep into it, give you feedback, talk about the shape of the emotional arc, the slides, the design, your phrasing, all that kind of stuff. Well, somebody down the line who's watching this as part of the Brand Lab group could say, I never thought about doing that. But I know if I apply those same principles to my content, it's going to take it up a notch. If I apply those same concepts to when I have a staff meeting or a shareholder meeting, that's going to work too. So that's the idea. You get in, you present your problem, and you get out. And the archives are designed for those who are like, what? That might be of interest to me. And I want to find out more about that because it might spark other ideas. I want to pause here because I realize I have to manage my time here. I think I have to leave pretty closely right at 10:30 here. So I have Kezia who has the funnel question. I have my friend Phyllis who has a question. And we brought up, he's not here anymore. So why don't we do that? Let's just pause in this for a second, Hector. And let's get to Kezia and Phyllis. And I don't think we can bring anybody else up. So Kezia, you have a funnel question? Go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's a funnel. Hi Chris, hi Hector, hey Phyllis. So I wanted to know, like, how do you create a value ladder when you offer when I have multiple offers for varying services?
That's the same problem we had, Kezia. We have many services and products, and it became very difficult to build a proper value ladder. I think you understood the concept. A value ladder is built on one core idea, positioning, product offering, and you have the low-cost entry version of that, and you have the super high bespoke version of that that's very expensive, that's limited because it's one-to-one or one to a few. So when we have that multiple product matrix and services, it became very difficult to do. It's very messy because we're trying to upsell and downsell to products that are not 100% aligned. So what I would suggest that you do is you look at where you're going to find the most value in what you can create for others and not worry about building a value ladder for all your other products. To build a value ladder around your key or primary revenue driver and to focus in on that. I talked to Eamon, who is the former CEO of AppSumo. We did a 2-hour podcast. I can't wait to share that with everybody here. You're definitely going to want to watch or listen to that episode. Is that he said, Chris, if you just focus on the thing that's driving the most revenue for you right now and the channel that's driving the most interest to that product or service, you will make $10 million this year. So I'm going to give you the same advice. If you just focus in on the thing that's driving the greatest amount of revenue for you right now and focus on those single channel where you're going to create the most interest for that product or service, you'll do really well. So it's just about that. Like, you don't have to get rid of your other products. You just don't focus on them right now. I hope that helps, Kezia. What do you think?
That helps. It gave me some clarity. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Before we get to Phyllis, Hector has a quick question from an audience submitted question, right?
Yeah, so quickly, we have Tarek here has a creative production house, creates video commercials. And his question is, my customers are asking me to give them some ideas, pitch them some ideas prior to paying me to actually do the work. And he's having sort of a tough time getting out of that loop where he spends all this time to pitch the ideas, and maybe they don't end up not paying. So he's asking, should I take a deposit? Like, how should I approach this? And the first thing I did in the DM, I recommended him to read Win Without Pitching, because like that book is written for this person to answer this question. But I also wanted to add some context. This person, I was kind of just doing some research. This person used to be a doctor, a medical doctor, and now it's doing this. So like my analogy was, listen, bring your background and leverage that. Look, the production work, the TV commercial, the video commercial that you're shooting for that person, that's surgery, okay? And then thinking about what to do surgery on, how to do it correctly, that's going to be your proper diagnosis. But the diagnosis is not just knowing what the pain point is. Sometimes you have to understand the patient's state of mind, and this essentially translates into you need to charge for a workshop. You sit down with the person, you add value by exchanging ideas back and forth, understanding what their vision for the business is or their commercial or whatever it is, And then after you talked about that, maybe they can walk out and buy it from somebody else, but you at least charge for the ideation. And then if they end up buying from you, hey, you give them a deposit, you give them that money back as a deposit towards the big project. But I think honestly that the solution here is always to charge a diagnosis, put a label to what that diagnosis is. It needs to be a service unto itself. It needs to be valuable unto itself, and people should pay for that. What are your thoughts, Chris?
I think you summed it up pretty well, Hector. There's a term that many of you guys may not be aware of. It's called a phased engagement. So when we take a big project, let's say the average budget for a video might be $50,000 that you produce, right? That sounds like a lot of risk in terms of like, this may not work out, I might not like you, I might not get what I want. So then they're hem and they're haw. And so what they do is they ask for ideas up front to mitigate their risk. It sounds reasonable in terms of a practice, but it doesn't sound great as a business model because now you're going to be pitching free ideas for them to ultimately decide if they want to move forward with you or not. So what you do is you take that $50,000 and you break down what portion of that you would have spent generating the idea, and you call that a phased engagement. So you present the number and they're like, you know what, that's not going to work for me. And if you keep hearing that, what you would do is many times what people suffer is, or what many people get hung up on is this big number. So I've anticipated that, and the way that I work is we do a phased engagement where we do concepting and you get 3 ideas from me, 3 treatments, and I'll charge $10,000 for that. Okay? And if you don't want to move forward, no problem. You have some skin in the game and we just walk away. I'm compensated for my ideas. If you want someone else to produce them, go ahead. You've bought them. They're your ideas. But if you want to proceed, what we can do is then build you a budget based on that, and that fee will be incorporated into the entire budget. And that way you just remove that as a conversation in terms of like what they're going to bring up. So I would do that.
Chris, Phyllis has a question here. Her question is, what skills did you have to learn or have to continue to learn for you as a predominantly right-brain person to be giving a coaching or advice to predominantly left-brain folks about the creative process? In other words, what did you have to do or what did you have to continue to do so you can effectively help left-brainers think right, as your slogan says?
I think the process of learning should never end, regardless of how high you think you were up on the mountain. But I don't think I have to learn any new skills to be able to give tremendous value to entrepreneurs, the left brain thinkers. And I think Hector is a perfect example of this, where, and Phyllis, this is what really excites me. If all of you hear the excitement rise in my voice right now, you understand why. It's because I've been focused too much on the business stuff. So people are like, this guy don't design. He don't know jack about design anymore. And what they don't understand is I've sit on 2 decades of design experience and creative direction and hands-on work, that now when I say a little thing to someone, when I just tell them, you know, this campaign, this is how they got their customers, this is the tagline, this is where it comes from, their heads explode. And I think this is easy work. If I just tap into that creative voice, which I've been collecting for the last 20 plus years, and share that with them, their heads explode and it's a wonderful reaction. I don't want to work that hard, Phyllis. You know me. So Hector, I'm curious from a left brainer, if you think if I were to share some of the creative concepts and the process and the formulas, which most people don't think there are formulas to everything, how would that impact you? And then I want to make sure you get to say what you need to say, because we're doing something special together later this year.
I think the biggest lesson that we all take here, especially Phyllis as well, I've heard some of your content too, it's fantastic, by the way, is that the learning process is very personal. Okay, so it's up to us individually to put the work, to put the learning to work. Unfortunately, many times we when it doesn't work, probably because we didn't put the work, we go back to the teacher and go, well, the teacher or the program wasn't comprehensive enough. And the reality is that any program that you enroll or any mentor that you have or any mastermind group that you have, at the end of the day, it's going to be up to you to really, truly want to change. You have to want it first, and then be open to experimenting and using the people in that group, whether it's the mentor, whether it's the other members, to bounce ideas back and forth and feel encouraged and empowered and energized by other people being in the same journey, and also being in the trenches with them, because it's hard, because we're running a business, because we have kids, because there's a million things happening in our lives. And making a change means probably sacrificing something that works, something that's predictable, something that's always been there. So we got to remove something in order to add something for the most of us who have pretty full lives. And we end up not doing it. And then we go back and go, well, the program wasn't good enough, or the trainer, didn't have enough skills. But at the end of the day, it's going to be up to us. And a lot of the things that Chris will teach, especially after watching a lot of his videos for the past 6 or 7 years, would probably be very similar to the stuff that he has taught before. But the difference is when you have 2 million people following you in YouTube, how much personal one-on-one can you do versus when you only have 50, 100 people, in which you start understanding the context over a period of months of being in the program. Then when somebody asks a question, Chris will no longer give the generic answers he would give to any random person in YouTube. I assume the answers are more personalized, with memory, with understanding of the struggles that you went through, et cetera, et cetera. So what excites me about Brand Lab personally is when I ask Chris a question 3 months from now, 4 months from now, I don't have to explain the backstory again. I can go straight to the question, and it saves everybody time, and it allows me to go straight into where I want, which is, what is this going to look like tangibly? Like, what is this going to look like when I'm done with this call, when I'm done with this program, whatever? What would it look like when I hit my boots on the ground, and exactly what that's going to look like? So that's kind of like what excites me about it. And I've been so excited about this new direction that Chris has been orchestrating, that I actually invited him to a conference I'm doing just for accountants. So I figured I'm going to get a lot of people that follow me in YouTube, which are other accountants, and say, hey, are you guys starving for this potential creative process? And I got my mentor, his name is Ron Baker, who's like my Blair Enns to Chris though, right? To come to the conference. And I said, Chris, you want to do this crazy thing, which is talking to a bunch of accountants. And it took a lot of convincing, right? Because Chris's world has always been other creatives. But like I've been doing my work to say, hey, Chris, trust me, you bridge this gap and you're going to change a lot of people's lives. And if you change accountants' lives, you're going to change business owners' lives. And some of those business owners will be creatives, and it will be part of the 1 billion people that you want to help make a living doing what they love, because accountants enable that, because accountants help people make their money, keep their money, so they get all the financial boring stuff out of the way and they can focus on creating value. So like I basically built my own conference, and I brought Chris Do as one of the sort of the right brain side of the conference. So Ron and I will be sort of the left brain. Chris will be the right brain, and we're going to show a whole bunch of accountants what's possible when you think in abstract, when you think in creative. And it's going to be in my hometown in Miami in October. If you have any left brain accountants here in this group, just go to altaccountant.com. That's the brand that we run the conference on, altaccountant.com. So I wanted to at least let you guys know that, that I'm here with a purpose. Obviously, not just promoting the conference, but bridging the gap between left brain accountants and right brain artists and designers.
All right. Thanks very much, Hector. We'll see you in October, if not sooner.
Oh, yeah. Very much looking forward to that. Thank you, everybody, for today's conversation, and we'll see you on the next one.